Well, good morning. I'm coming to you from the banks of Mallard Creek, which hopefully will soon become apparent. Today I want to talk to you about this story that we have been exploring over these past few weeks, of this story of Jacob. It's from Genesis. Jacob's an interesting character, at least he is for me. I've always enjoyed the story of Jacob. It's always sort of spoke to me on many levels. Jacob is difficult to talk about, or difficult to explain, because he is a man of God. He is the son of Isaac. He's one of two sons of Isaac. His older brother is Esau. And Jacob has sort of lived this, or in this story, he's lived this very difficult life. Oftentimes difficult of his own making. Sometimes it's difficult because he's been pushed to do things by his mother. And sometimes he just falls into the wrong situation, or he falls into a situation that isn't good. But he always seems to make the best of it. He always seems to come out on top. And we're told in our story in the Bible that he comes out on top because he is a man of God. And Jacob is above all a man of God. And I guess that's the best way to describe Jacob, as a man of God. But Jacob has had to do some running in his life. He's had to escape. First of all, he's had to escape his own family. So we know that Jacob goes because Isaac has told him, do not take a wife from these people that we live in, this land that we live in. Go back to our homeland, find somebody that is related to us. And so he does go back there, but he goes back there not so much because he wants to find another wife, because he's trying to escape death. See, he has stolen or tricked his brother Esau, who's not the brightest bulb in the bunch, let's face it. He's tricked Esau out of his birthright for a pot of stew. And then with the help of his mother, Rebecca, he has tricked his father, Isaac, to give him a blessing that should be for Esau, to give Jacob the blessing that should be for Esau, should be for the firstborn. And so he has tricked Esau out of basically everything that Esau has been looking forward to. And Esau is ready to kill him. Esau is ready to throttle him. Esau is ready to eliminate him from the face of this earth. And so he has to run. Rebecca encourages him to go, and Isaac, they sort of trick Isaac to tell him to go and find a wife in the land where they come from. And so he has run to find this wife, basically to try to escape Esau's rage. Now, he has come to the lands of kinsmen. He has seen Rachel, fallen madly in love with her. Rachel's father is Laban. Laban is a trickster. Laban has tricked him into first marrying Leah, his oldest daughter, and saying, hey, work for me for another 7 years and you can have Rachel. And so he has worked for another 7 years, and now he has lots of sons. He has lots of children. He has lots of wealth, and he's been blessed. And Laban has realized that his blessings, his wealth, his ability to make it in this world is because Jacob is blessed by God and doesn't want him to leave. And so there's a little trickery, because the fact is Jacob is a man of God, remember, and God is calling him back to his homeland, back to home with his father and his mother and his brother. And so he says to Laban, hey, let me go. Laban sort of tricks him, saying, you can have all the spotted and striped goats, takes all those away. But Jacob sort of tricks him again with some willows. And so he's escaping Laban. So this is a theme of Jacob's life. He's now running away from family. Laban catches up with him, goes, hey, look, why did you leave in such a way? Well, Jacob's like, I thought you'd be angry. Well, I am sort of angry. But Laban's realizing he's sort of lost the battle. And so what they do is they sort of part ways, essentially saying, this is a line in the sand. You stay on your side. I'll stay on mine. Don't cross this. Don't come back. And so Jacob has escaped his father-in-law and now has all his wealth, all his livestock, all his slaves. and what have you, and he gets to the river Jabbok, the reason why we're at this creek. Now, I've seen pictures of the river Jabbok. Remember, this is an arid country, so rivers aren't necessarily going to look the same way we think rivers are going to look like here in the very wet and humid North Carolina. So actually, the river Jabbok looks a lot like Mallard Creek. It's maybe flowing a little bit faster than this at times, but it is not much of a river. But it is a barrier. It is just on the line of the promised land. On this side, not the promised land. On that side, the promised land. Then on this side, safe from brother. On that side, not so sure. And this is Jacob's problem. See, he doesn't know how Esau feels about him still. Has he forgiven him? Has he moved on? Does he still want to kill him? Does he still want to eliminate? Will he steal all his wives and slaves and cattle and leave him for dead? And so Jacob sends his people, his slaves and his wife and everything over across the river to the other side and says, go over there. I'm going to wait over here for the evening. And so he's on this side, not the promised land. They're all on that side, the promised land. And Jacob is wrestling. He's wrestling with whether or not he should cross the river, whether or not he should get his toes wet, whether or not his brother is going to kill him or not, whether or not he should follow God. And so we're told that evening as he's sleeping and debating and wondering whether or not he should actually go, that a man comes and they start to wrestle. And Jacob won't let go of this man, and this man won't let go of Jacob. And they're wrestling and they're wrestling, and the man finally says, let go of me, Jacob. And Jacob goes, no, I will not. And the man actually strikes him in the hip and knocks his hip out of joint. And Jacob still will not let go. And Jacob finally realizes that this is not a man, that this is God. And he says, give me a blessing. Give me your blessing. Tell me your name. And so God blesses Jacob. And God says, you really don't need to know my name. You know who I am. And then he does this, and we know this is a major transition in Jacob's life, because Jacob will no longer be known to God as Jacob. Jacob will be known as Israel. Israel. The people of Israel. We are starting to see come to fruition the promise that God has made to Jacob and his family years and years ago with Abraham. You will be the beginning of a great nation. Your numbers will outnumber the grains of sand in the world. Jacob is now Israel. Jacob is now blessed by God. Jacob can now cross the river Jabbok. And the river Jabbok is named, and that name is sort of a wordplay on Jacob. That river Jabbok is the stopping point, is this sort of this barrier for Jacob, and Jacob has to be changed. Jacob has to be altered. Jacob has to be blessed, encouraged, and become Israel in order to cross this river Jabbok, in order to leave Jacob behind and pick up Israel, pick up this new blessing, pick up this new call on his life. And I really love this story because I can really relate to wrestling with God. I can really relate to running away from your own story. I can relate to not wanting to cross that river. Yeah, I know that's the promised land, God, but I don't want to go there because I'm not too sure what is on the other side for me, and I'm a little scared. And we all sort of have our river Jabboks, don't we? We also all have those places that we just know we're not really sure we want to go across, don't we? That we send everybody else across and we go, I'll catch up with you, and we wait on the other side, and we wrestle. We wrestle with ourselves, we wrestle with who we are, we wrestle with God. And we question whether or not we're following God's call, or are we following our own call? And we wonder, do we really need to go over to the other side, or can we just sneak off into the night and forget that God is even calling us to the other side? And it's our choice. We do have a choice. We can either cross the river or we can stay on this side and hide. And God will wrestle with us, and God will not let go. But it's still our choice. It is still our choice to have our lives to be transformed into something greater, into Israel, into a continuation of the story. And that's why I love this story, because it reminds me time and time again that there have been greater men than I who have wrestled with God and lost and gained too. And that's the crux of this story, is that in order for this narrative to continue, in order for this narrative that was begun with Abram who became Abraham, who didn't think he was going to ever have a child, has Isaac. Isaac has children, and Jacob has children, lots of them. And the story is continued. And it's not exactly the story that we think. I'm sure Abraham never thought that this is how God was going to fulfill this story. I doubt Isaac understood it either, or Jacob completely either. But the story, the narrative continues, and our choice is, do we become a part of the narrative, or do we run away from the narrative? And how are we going to join and be a part of that narrative? How are we going to be a part of God's plan? And this can be scary, because the truth of the matter is that we don't know how it's all going to work out. We don't know how it's going to play out. What is God going to require of us? Is God going to require that we cross this river just to be murdered by our own brother? To lose everything that we've worked for, to everything that we have fought for, because we've crossed the river? And see, there's this great unknown when it comes to following God. And we wrestle with that, and we fight against it, because we want to know. We want to be in control, or at least we want to think we're in control. Now, I can say that because I am a control freak, and I know what it's like to want to be in control of my life. And the truth is that when you hand your life over to God, when you wrestle with God and you say, all right, God, I give up, I will follow you, you have now lost control of your life to a large extent. You are going to cross the river. You are going to cross the mountains. You are going to cross to the other side, and you're going to follow God's plan, not your own, until you want to try to gain that control back again. And, you got to wrestle with God all over again. And that's the other thing I want to sort of talk about. This wrestling with God, this is not a one and done kind of thing. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little cramped in my legs. But it's just not a one and done kind of thing. We will be wrestling with God over and over and over again in our lives. And I got to tell you, if you're not wrestling with God, then maybe you need to look at your faith walk a little bit. And you need to ask yourself, am I really truly following God? Am I really coming up to these boundaries and willing to cross to the other side? Or am I coming up to these boundaries, up to these rivers of Jabbok, and going, nah, I don't feel like swimming, and turning around? Not today, God. Maybe tomorrow. Because this task we have been asked to do, this calling we have been asked to pick up, this marching orders we have been given to follow God, to be a kingdom builder for God, to be a part of something that is so much bigger than ourselves, it's not going to be an easy thing to do. It's going to be easy to follow sometimes, and it's going to be easy to say, well, after the fact, well, why did I ever question the following God? But it's going to have times where you're going to want to not take that step into the water, where you're not going to want to cross that boundary, where you're going to doubt whether or not you're following God's plan at all. And that's perfectly normal for us to doubt, to question, to wrestle. God doesn't mind us asking questions. God does not mind us debating. God does not mind us questioning God's plan. What God doesn't like, and I have found this out the hard way, God doesn't like us to question God's plan and then to God's plan all out the window, to not listen. And see, this is why prayer is so important. It's important for us to be in communication with God. It's important for us to be in that relationship with God. But oftentimes what we forget is we pick up the phone and we go, yeah, God, this is what I want. I want this, this, and this, and this, and please bless these people, and do this for me. And God, if you could make the world a little better, that'd be great. And God, why you keep messing up? And God, you know, my life is not really great right now. Can you make it better? I don't have a new car, so can you get me a new car? And all this. And then we hang up the phone real fast. And we're done. And we think, okay, that's prayer, right? No, prayer is, God, let me tell you what's going on in my life. Oh my goodness, you would not believe this. Can you believe this happened to me? Oh, I feel so lost. And then just stop, be quiet. Stop talking and listen. Hold the receiver up to our ears and just listen. Listen in silence for God, what God would have us to do. And I can tell you right now, in that silence, you're going to be doing a lot of wrestling. You're going to be doing a lot of what Jacob was doing on the river of Jabbok. And God is not going to let go. And God is hoping that you won't let go also. And that wrestling will exhaust you and will wear on you, but it will be well worth it in the end. Because in the end, you will know that you truly are following God's plan. And in the end, you may be given a new name, a new purpose. Just like Jacob, who became Israel, who will continue this narrative of God's story here as he builds his kingdom. And that is ultimately what we are. We're kingdom builders. We are part of God's narrative here on this world as he builds his kingdom, as he rectifies this world with his heavenly world. And that will take some wrestling and gnashing of teeth and some doubt, but it's going to involve us listening and being willing to wrestle and being willing to question, and then taking some time in silence to figure it out, to have the Holy Spirit speak to us. And that, my friends, is pretty much the only way that I know to be a part of God's narrative. Is to be in relationship with God, to go through all these wonderful experiences and all the experiences that aren't so wonderful, and to do so knowing that God is right there with you, that God has been there with you the whole time, that God will never leave you. You know, I'm part of the Emmaus community, and as part of the Emmaus community, we have walks, and one of the things that we tell the young kids that come through the Emmaus groups, to the adults, to the folks that are in Kairos, which is in the prisons, to the folks that are in Epiphany, which is the youth prisons. They all hear the same thing. You have been taken up to the mountaintop. You have been given this wonderful gift. You have experienced God in so many ways, but eventually you're going to have to come down off the mountain. Eventually, there's going to come a time where you're going to come to your own river of Jabbok. And God is going to ask you to cross that river, and your life will never be the same on the other side. And at that time, you're going to feel lost, and you're going to feel lonely, and you're going to feel all alone. And you're going to wonder whether or not you've made a mistake, and whether or not you should follow and get your toes wet. And all of that is okay, as long as you remember one thing. God is right there with you on this side of the bank, wrestling with you, talking with you, being in a relationship with you, even if you don't cross that river, even if you don't cross that creek to the other side. God won't give up. Never has, never will. So, my friends, I encourage you, as you come across this next week, your own rivers of Jabbok, as you start to begin your relationship and your conversations with God, that you remember the story of Jacob. And you remember that it's okay to wrestle with God. And you remember that it's okay to question and to not be so sure. But know this, God is with you. You are loved in ways that you cannot even begin to imagine. And if you do decide to step into that water, you will be blessed beyond imagine. My friends, I love you. I'm praying for you. I hope that you are well. Amen.